Welcome, everybody. Honored, delighted that we get the opportunity once again to step into this awesome conversation and understand what it takes to really, truly function as actual human beings instead of bundles of blame and resentment and hostility and fear. It's a pretty cool state to move through. And delighted that you're here to be part of the conversation. And Ms. Jeannie, do we have any questions in the chat room? Anything that came through the app? Or anybody with a hand up in the phone queue? Let's see if we've got a start for conversation.
No hands up or questions in the chat room. However, I did get an email the other day. And hold just one moment. Let me pull that up. Actually from Andre, who is doing our conversions from the MP3s to MP4s for us. And so he
Thank you, Andre. It's awesome what you're getting
Mm-hmm.
accomplished there.
Absolutely. And so, question. On June the 25th podcast, you mentioned the genesis of Noohra, Noohra.
Right.
The original source light in relation to Hasuka, the darkness, that is the absence of light. Are there any further references as to what is that pre-light darkness, the dark and the void that's mentioned in King James, into which the breath went forth and mind energy burst into?
Nothing. It's just one word. It's nothing. There's the void is literally void, and then something begins. It's interesting. I've been doing research for the quantum still point process in understanding what it is that is unfolding there, and ended up looking at some science stuff and science's way of looking at the world and how the scientific model now is, coming from the direction of, well, there was matter, and then matter gave rise, and this gave rise, and finally ended up with a mind. And it's just kind of interesting to watch how backward that whole model is. And when you go to the opening words in John, you hear those words don't say in the beginning was the Word and the Word became flesh. What they say is in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. And then if you go to, and let me just change screens here for a second. I ended up listening to about an hour lecture this morning of a physicist who's talking about, the latest in physics and all that neat stuff. And when you hear most of the scientific world is, coming from the point that matter's where it all started, and then it became, matter gave rise to mind, and the quantum world was really, the guy who won the Nobel Prize in physics. He's been totally ignored. And until we wake up to, the greatest genius in the world of physics, or at least one of the top minds, is Max Planck. And he's the guy who won the Nobel Prize in physics for understanding quantum physics, or bringing forward the whole idea of quantum theory and how it works. And the practical aspect of it, there's so many things that we are now able to do, so many things we can do successfully because Max Planck brought forward quantum physics. And yet, that world is still, here's the guy who won the Nobel Prize, and, he contemplated, there's a quote which I'm about to read, which I've read before on the show. He contemplated this for 26 years after he won the Nobel Prize in Physics for sourcing this whole idea of quantum mechanics. And he contemplated it for 26 years. And recognizing that, how much thought do you suppose the guy who wins the Nobel Prize in Physics, he's an experimental physicist, he's in the laboratory, how much do you suppose he spends in 26 years to come up with this thought? And it's totally ignored by science. Scientists who say the foundation of their thinking is quantum physics. So the foundation of their thinking is Max Planck, and yet they ignore this. Planck wrote, "In all my research, I have never come across matter. To me, the term matter implies a bundle of energy which is given form by an intelligent spirit. As a man who's devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, the study of matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about atoms this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume," he says, this is 26 years after he wins the Nobel Prize, he says, "we have to make an assumption that behind this force, there is the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter." If we go to the opening words in the book of John, we hear, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh." So the Greeks tell us. In Aramaic, it's "in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became matter." So what fills this void? What brings this into existence? And what Max Planck is telling us is that it's the mind. The opening words in the book of John say, the mind energy that literally pulls these particles of energy together to form this world we call matter. And so there's an absence, and then comes a presence. And it is the mind that sources mind energy and creates these organized states of energy that end up becoming what we call matter. So that would be my take, in exactly the same way as, people want to ascribe to darkness some sort of a presence. But there is no positive force, there is no presence called darkness. Darkness is simply an absence. And so that would be my take on it. There's an absence, and then you bring something into the absence and becomes what we call the world. Now, if you've got the time, Andre, I'd love to, if there are other thoughts that you have about it, if you happen to be with us, push one. Let's have a conversation about it and see if there's another direction to go, if there's a bigger insight or a bigger place to go with it. I'd be delighted to have that conversation, but that's the best input I have. Mind energy becomes flesh. Mind energy sources these energetic particles that get pulled together in a way that reflects what the matter what the mind chooses to formulate. And that becomes a statement of creatorship, and probably the biggest atrocity done to us down through the ages and that we bought into is that we've had hidden from us or denied the fact that we are by nature creators. And of course, if we don't know we're creators, then we go in all kinds of crazy places and create from crazy mind energy because we don't know that we're doing it to ourselves. And so to me, becoming conscious of this whole process becomes key. And to recognize that in this field that source this mind energy is where we live, move, and have our being. And if we have the tuning mechanism available to reflect that originating mind energy, then we will accurately bring that originating mind energy into the material world, what we call the material world. If we have no mechanism for bringing that in, and that's the whole idea of quantum still point, how it ties into Max Planck's work. You know, if I have a television set and it is, you know, the latest and greatest, the highest level of picture quality and sound quality, it's just a monumental piece of equipment. But I have no antenna or no internet reception to bring a signal into it. My TV is pretty much blank and void. It's not worth much to have a signal. And ultimately, we need to become aligned with the frequencies that we choose to bring into our world. We need to set our antennas to be able to receive those energetic patterns. And we're told in the ancient scriptures that, you know, in the field of the Creator, we live, move, and have our being. If we are knocked out of alignment, and this is the whole idea of quantum still point, to come back into alignment, if we're knocked out of alignment physiologically with our true being, then there's no antenna to interchange, to resonate with, to bring in the signals that come from that in which we live, move, and have our being. If we're in that posture, then the only thing we've got to turn to for advice is what's happened in our generations, what has happened in our bloodline. Then those generational patterns tend to run our lives. And you go back in the scriptures and you realize they're talking about physics, they're talking about physiology, they're talking about energy. And you hear this statement made, and I always feel like I need to put a kind of a warning in whenever I use this word, because it's got so many insane connotations in the culture because of Greek misunderstandings. But we hear this statement being made by the Creator. The sins of the fathers, remembering that that word sin is an archery term that simply means off the mark. The energies that are off the mark of the fathers, and of course that wasn't a sexist remark, this is of the previous generations, will be passed, yea, unto 3 and 4 generations. And the really important key part of that follows the comma at the end of the sentence that I just quoted. It says, will be passed to 3 and 4 generations, yea, of those who hate me. Hate there not being in a love, as in a love relationship, those who cannot attune to me, those who are not attuned, those who are lost, are so far out of alignment that they can't bring in the active love in which they live, move, and have their being. That they're stuck with the generational patterns. That's their only advisor. Peter shared with us on the show last week as we were doing the quantum still point, someone who comes from a country, from Sweden, with no real input, as we have in this culture so strongly, of the so-called Christian ethic or so-called Christian thought. And the third day of the quantum still point, Peter came out of it with just a brilliant observation. And it was like, no, it's not about being Christian, being born again. And this isn't a religious idea. It's the physics of the universe. It's where we live, move, and have our being. And what he said is, it's like, oh, it's about Christ being born in me. That all of a sudden, think about the TV set with no antenna, and you hook an antenna up to it, and all of a sudden, what happens? The television gives birth to what comes in through the antenna. Otherwise, all it's got is whatever's in the TV set. And if there's no signal within the TV set, then we get a blank screen. What do we get? Just a white screen and some noise in the background. That would be, the equivalent. That's a metaphor for the sins of the Father. Yeah, the noise of whatever's in the TV will be the only thing you'll be able to see if you are separated from the signal coming in. And what's the signal coming in? That's what Peter said. It was just, when I heard him say it, it was just like, whoa, what an insight for someone without any training in that arena. Oh, it's about the signal coming to expression in me, being receptive to it rather than run by the energetic patterns of the generations. And we literally are live moving through this energy field that has filled the void. And if we allow ourselves to attune to it, then literally what was in the ancient scriptures metaphorically referred to as the mind of Christ, the signal, the pattern for the perfect, becomes available to us. Because that's how an antenna works with a TV set. It's through resonance. It's by the resonance that allows that energy exchange to occur. But if I'm separated from the signal, I can't give birth to its expression. So, as I've said, I'm working through creating a roadmap for the quantum still point to be able to express what it means so that people can comprehend, and when they're ready, or if they're ready to go there. And from an energetic point of view, it's just becoming clearer and clearer. I had a conversation with a gentleman and had gone through it just this morning, gone through it about a month ago with me. And he's like, I spent all these years, I was brought up in church, spent all these years learning all this stuff. And it's like, you just distilled it down to the core. And I never thought it was a distillation process. But it was like, gee, Joe, is that copyright? Can I use that? Distilling it down to what's the core of this whole process? What makes it work? So if there was a void and an intelligent mind filled the void, is that what Max Planck was writing about? Again, here's what he says. In all my research, I've never come across matter. To me, the term matter implies a bundle of energy which is given a form by an intelligent spirit. So all of these quantum waves, we live in this quantum soup. If there were no intelligent mind, all it would be a quantum soup. But then an intelligence starts to bring these quantum energetic patterns together. So again, back to Planck, this man who devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you, as a result of my research about atoms, this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force. There has to be a signal that brings the particles together to express as an atomic reflection. And it's this which holds the particles of the atom together. He refers to it as a minute solar system. So perhaps the void first was filled with this intelligence. And in that intelligence, we live, move, and have our being. But if we're not available to it, because we literally because our antenna is misaligned, then somebody talks about it, we go, oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'd like that. I'd like to have that. What do I have to do? I want it, I want it, I want it, I want it, I want it. Well, I'm out of alignment with it, so I can't have it, but I want it. You listen to Paul. Once he had that opening experience, he wanted it. And what's the signal made of? And Paul's got a really powerful expression. You know, the whole world of the high ethics of what people call Christianity is made up primarily of service. So Paul goes through all of these expressions. Says, what if I sell everything I have and I give it to the poor? What if I feed the hungry? What if I clothe the naked? What if I give water to the thirsty man? There, now I've accomplished all that you said had to be accomplished. And Paul said, all of that's nothing if I don't have the signal, if I'm not attuned to love. If I have not love and I do all that stuff, it's a total waste of time. And you'll only have the signal when you have the device capable of receiving it. And that device is our physiology. And if it's misaligned, then the signal can't come through. So, some thoughts. And Miss Jeannie, does that garner any activity in the phone queue or in the...
It is all quiet here.
All quiet. Well, if you're out there in listener land, what's your thought? How can we support you? What is on your mind? Our call-in number, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you'll be listening to the show. And then if you push 1,
you have a hand up.
Well, let's say hello.
It is Miss Julie, 541. You're on the air.
Hey there, young lady. Welcome. Hello, Julie.
Are you muted?
Oh, yes. Is this better?
That's better. The old mute challenge trick. I know how that one works.
Yeah. Boy, I'm so in the habit of muting myself. So, Michael, hi, Jeannie.
That's an interesting external expression of something you might want to look at internally.
There's so many. I have a very long list, but yes, in this moment, I feel integrated in a way that feels balanced. Tend to split myself quite a bit. Yeah, and so I'm doing the things that I do throughout my day today. For example, I am keeping an awareness of, is this good for me? And noticing that that's okay, that was good for me, or this is okay, it's good for what I need right now. Just sort of a narrative. which I have a narrative going all the time anyway. So one of the things I've noticed is I find time for myself in between my tasks. As I'm walking from room to room, I have a narrative going all the time that is observing, where am I now in this moment? How do I feel about things? And it's mostly friendly and user-friendly towards me, because it's totally egocentric too, and it's just me. So, but I often feel it go over into the non-being and bickering about things. And so when I see myself more focused out in the world, blaming it for how I feel, and I'm bickering about it and building a case from the evidential mind, etc., the etc. mind, I'm just pulling back and being really gentle with myself. I have a lot of deep and raw feelings that I just want to notice how I might try to push them down and then allow them to come back up again. And so I'm just being with all that and feeling more whole and human than, you know, more than, yeah. And so, work. Yeah. What'd you say?
The fruit of your work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I was watching television today and what people were saying about Biden, you know, the people who cared about him and really wanted him to go for it and saw his value and credibility. And, you know, it really brought me to tears. I became tearful. I was resonated with a certain grieving process to see something go, something die. You know, I've been feeling that for a while about America. And I'm here to say and be the change I can for the goodness that America has always strived to be. And I think we can continue. I know I'm still integrated with it. And I'm just looking at everything that's coming up about it and hoping there's healing and
some deep grief.
Yeah, blessings and deepness for everyone. Yeah, grieving. You know, and a little bit of that haunting blame of myself for not doing more, not doing enough, not being good enough, not getting the approval I need, not being listened to and heard to, all those little big issues. So, you know, I've asked Ruka to just keep showing me, you know, how to heal all this and all these minute items. And I started saying in the beginning, I'm feeling more integrated and balanced, and I am, but it's in the face of all the things that have kept me split for so much of my life. So it's like I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm looking at two mirrors, the one that I've carried around, the weight and the burden of it, and the one that is truly me, the true human being. And I'm connecting more with the hope of what I will create going forward, and I'm appreciating what's showing itself to me now. And I just feel real present and happy about the possibility of things, even in my grief. It's really interesting.
Nice.
I guess I'm integrating, you know. Yeah. So I just thought I'd give you a little
weakened.
reading. What? Go ahead.
It sounds like you've weakened the voice of grief and pain in you enough that you can be aware of it, but instead of being lost in it, you're able to connect with a larger space of being.
And acknowledge that it's true and good for me, you know, that, because it's the truth. I mean, that's the truth of what I feel and how I see things. So I have to at least give that to myself. It's pretty much what I'm always asking everyone else to give me, is that credibility. So I'm giving myself credibility, I guess.
Awesome.
And it's
nice
satisfying
piece of work.
because, yeah, I just got that. It's satisfying. Like, okay, I feel that I've been heard, you know. But anyway, I just giving you the info, the report from here, from me. So thank you for the work and all your support.
Absolutely honored and delighted and glad to be on the team and glad to have you on ours.
And I look forward to the next intensive in my my agenda moving forward. I definitely want to do this new intensive with your quantum still point. And so I know I'm in preparation for it, and I'm moving at an aware pace so that I keep myself open to the possibilities of how I can get there. So thank you, Michael, for you taking it to the next level so that we all are doing that too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
And,
it was a good session
Jeannie,
this
of course.
weekend, I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And the silence that came out of our completion point yesterday, I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was unique.
With the still point breathing club, I thought it was pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you read to us, I think yesterday or maybe the day before, what you've written so far about it. And, that is stunning and stilling and quieting, and just to see that truth reflected towards us and, brought into being.
Joining you and making it real, young lady.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yes, so I'm embodying it with each step I take in my day today, and just moving gradually into maybe less decisions made too rashly and quickly or without a more clear direction. I'm not sure. I'm warning myself to not just go into rash behavior or rash decisions with regard to my partner, who's returning sometime today from a trip of seeing friends. And, I want to be wholly me rather than the being that I've adapted myself to being in this relationship. And I just want to keep observing. So I guess I've made a lot of progress. I feel good, so I'm glad I called in. I'm complete.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And hello to everyone out there who I've been in intensives with, and hope you're all doing well and alive and well, alive in the process and the truth, living the truth and the blessings.
Yay.
So, yeah, okay. Well, Michael, I'm done. I'm gonna go and let others come across your phone line if they're there.
All right,
okay?
young lady.
Thank you.
All right, listen.
Thank you. You too. Mm-hmm.
So, Jeannie, before I move back, and I've been doing this for days now, trying to get back to the lesson we started, I think, a week ago Friday, and haven't gotten there yet. But before I step into there, do we have anybody else in the phone queue or anything in the chat room happening?
It is all quiet. I was just looking up a couple of phone numbers. A hand just went up. So area code 520. You're on the air. Who do we have?
This is Audrey from Tucson.
Oh, hey, young lady. Welcome.
I have a couple of questions, general questions, and
Let's go for
three
it.
of them, and I'll take the answer off the air. I'd like to have your definition of stillness, of silence, stillness, S like my S-less.
Okay.
S.
Okay.
Stillness and silence. And is there a difference between the two of them? And also, I have another question. Are there any neutral thoughts? And I will listen to your answers off the air.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's tie this. Sure. Good questions. Let's tie this idea of still point breathing into the stillness. And the objective of the still point breathing, the result of still point breathing, is to reach that point where the breath, as opposed to being held, which means resistance and the unwillingness to deal with something, in the still point, the breath stops, but it is not being held. It stops because it seems it's not necessary. And one, instead of being in a resistance state, remember we've defined from the Aramaic, the word Satan is not about a guy with a red suit, a tail, and a pitchfork. The word Satan in Aramaic means the resistor, one who misleads. And when we're stuck in the stories in our minds based in hostility or fear, and we're asked to be responsible for those stories, most people go into resistance. No, that's not mine. That's not about me. And then people share what the mislead is of their minds. They'll talk about somebody else. And so the still point is a non-resistive state where energy can move high speed, fast forward. And part and parcel of it is silence. The energy is moving on the most subtle of levels, and for most people in the still point, there's just silence. But if you develop the ability to really listen, that silence is made up of a high-speed process that's happening. Because the resistance is gone, one moves into that superconductor state where things move high-speed, fast-forward, and it's hard for the mind to keep up with it. So that would be my take, how they would tie together. For most people, when they go into the still point, it is silence. And the reason it seems like silence, my take, and I'm talking from my own experience, is because when we're only used to being aware from the level of the mind rather from the level of being, in the still point, things are moving so fast. In the stillness, things are moving so fast that the mind can't keep up with it. So it seems like silence. But if you're really tuned in, there'll be that subtle movement of energy. So the objective is to go to that still point and then, you know, to take it to the next level, to go to quantum still point, which is this personal intensive that I'm doing now with people, is to not only go to silence or the still point, but for the mind to let go and allow the brainwash, the programs, the hostility and fear from the previous generations to collapse. You know, you've heard me say many times, in order to heal, you got to be out of your mind. And most people are striving to find answers with their minds, as though the mind is where the answers are, and they're not. In fact, the secrets are hidden by the mind, not in the mind. And so to heal, you got to be out of your mind. Again, you're back to the stillness, to the quiet place. And in that quiet place, it's not an activity you have to do. There is the presence of love, and the presence of love, truly, the active presence of love, when we're in a non-resistant state, when the resistance is gone, that's when monumental things that the mind could never deal with begin to collapse and are healed, are undone. So I hope that fits and makes sense of your question. Did that address it? Is there any other direction we need to go with it? That's what you're thinking of. Jeannie, is Audrey still with us?
I think it's my phone. My phone.
Okay, we got you. I can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, you can hear me.
So did that fit? Did that make sense of what you're looking for?
Yes. And could the result be the, let's say, the feeling of bliss? Because there is nothing. It's just a flow. It's just bliss.
The natural state of a human being.
Bliss.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's it exactly.
And will you explain? Thank you. And then the neutral thought. Could you expand on neutral thoughts?
Yeah. When we enter into the realm of thought, then if we go to those opening words in the book of John, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. We enter into the world of producing effects. So is the effect one that supports life? Then we'd say that's a constructive thought or a thought based in love. If it doesn't support life, then it would be what in the Aramaic sense would be sin, the energy that's off the mark. And so to make sure that the mind stays connected to that active presence of love, because there are no neutral thoughts. Every time you enter into a thought and every time you engage in mind energy, it's going to produce a result.
So could we say then it's either constructive or destructive?
Exactly. Basically, there are two qualities of energy relative to this integrated energy system that we call our body-mind unit. There's that which lifts it up, integrative energy, and that which tears it down, disintegrative energy. Everything we engage in is going to have an impact. It's going to go in one direction or the other.
Thank you. The more I listen, the more questions come up. And
yay!
Could you, I didn't expect this, but it did come up. Could you expand on duality and polarity?
Well, duality and polarity are aspects of one and the same thing. Once you enter into the realm of thoughts and you recognize there are no neutral thoughts, if we were just to think about it mechanically, if there are no neutral thoughts, one thought goes straight ahead, one thought goes straight behind. And so if we looked, or let's take it instead of straight ahead and behind, let's look at left and right. So one thought goes left, another one goes right. So to the left we would have one polarity, and to the right we would have the opposite polarity. So once we enter into that realm, then we have this polarity. And then, relative to our integrated state, if we have the disintegrative energy, or what we would call the negative polarity, when we put it into, another word for a disintegrative energy would be incoherent. Let's use an example. I'm sitting watching television. Now, this doesn't apply quite so much anymore because we've got all this digital stuff now where we've changed, but you remember this. I know you've been around long enough to remember sitting and watching television, and you had a good picture and good sound. It was all sounding good. And all of a sudden, somebody pulled in the driveway. You had an antenna on the house back then, and somebody pulled in the driveway, and the car they were driving was out of tune. And what happened? There was all this incoherent energy. Static, exactly. Incoherent energy. And when it entered into the system, and it literally was picked up by the TV antenna, all of a sudden, what was my beautiful picture and sound becomes snowy and, noisy and static. That's it exactly. That's what incoherent energy, and that's what in the Aramaic sense is sin is. It's just an incoherent energy. So there are energies that we bring when, our physiology is designed for perfection. If we bring an incoherent energy in or static, then it's going to begin the destruction of that system. Forgiveness is how I take any incoherent energy that's in my system and I begin to remove it from my system. That's forgiveness, the removal process. Of course, the Greek philosophy was based in blame, so instead of forgiveness being, I have an incoherent energy creating static in my system, I think I'll go to work and remove it, it became, there's an incoherent energy in my system, it's somebody else's fault, so I need to let them off the hook. And so a totally false idea of forgiveness came in, and everybody ran around saying, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you for the incoherent energy that's in me, the static that's in me, rather than going, I have some static, I think I'll do what it takes to remove the static. And that's forgiveness.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So the static energy would be the disintegrative, the polarity of the negative, and that which clarifies the sound, that which makes the signal stronger, more coherent, gives me a better picture and better sound. So that would be the polarity of integration, upliftment, that which supports life.
Thank you for being available, and thank you for the clarification.
Absolutely honored and delighted, young lady, and I'm glad to I'm just so delighted that you're moving forward and doing your work and rocking along. And, for our audience who perhaps don't know you, Miss Audrey has shared with us on the show that she's in her 80s, and she's just rocking along with doing her work, and I think it's awesome.
I think so, too.
Yep, I hear you. I'm with you 100%. And joining you in accelerating, moving forward every day.
Blessings. Blessings and peace.
All right, young lady. All right, lots of love and blessings. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, Miss Jeannie. Do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything else happening in the chat room?
It is all quiet. So we've got 10 minutes. If somebody has a question, press 1. Or, Michael, you got 10 minutes to go back into your topic.
I'll jump back into our lesson. Yeah. Okay, well, let's just check. A call-in number. If you're on a station where we can't see you in our control panel, it's 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you're listening to the show directly. If you push 1, that will raise a hand in the control panel, and Jeannie will know you want to talk to us. So if you're out there in listener land, push 1. Let's have a conversation.
You have a hand up.
Okay, let's go for it.
Miss Celinda, 541, you're on the air.
Welcome, young lady.
Welcome. I'm laughing.
How's your foot?
How it's really, really much, much better. I think I followed my inner guidance, and as I've mentioned to you before, my people ask me, "Who's your physician?" And I said, for most people, I say, I don't have one because they don't get it about the inner physician anyway. But I said, oh, the master physician or the inner physician. And that's where I went, and I used my essential oils and the Avicen and compression, elevation, some frozen peas for a while. And it took about a week, though. It's just
getting rid of the incoherent energy.
Yeah. And
Good.
I was really grateful the way I responded to the cat. I was really grateful. It was like there was no anger, no anything when she bit me. It was just like, okay, you stepped on her. She's a little reflexive creature. She's going to bite back. Somebody's attacking
And what was it to bit you?
My cat.
Ah.
It was the middle of the night, and she's kind of black. We call her Black Yoda. Actually, we call her Black Yodini because she looks like a little
great.
Yoda. She has this great meditation. She's a tortoise, but she doesn't have a lot of tortoise on her. She just has some like streaks of orange, and her ears, her whole face. The most obvious orange streak of all is like right down the center of her face, down her nose. And she has this very mystical look about her, except for her yowl. We told her she'd never be an opera singer, but she would be a soprano opera singer. Yeah, that's the way they are for me. I don't resonate with those high-pitched tones. But anyway, she's a feral cat, and she adopted us actually, and so yeah, and so it was just this awareness, you stepped right on the middle of her body. It was amazing that she didn't pop, and in the middle of the night, because we're in the motorhome, and we don't have any pull-outs on our motorhome, so the aisle down the motorhome was 2.5 feet wide, or sometimes maybe close to 3, but not really. And so there she was on the coolest part of the floor, because we have wood-looking linoleum on the floor. It took out a lot of the carpeting. And so she was there in that one little cool spot where there weren't rugs and stuff. And, of course, I came out in the middle of the night, didn't even think about her, and stepped right on her. We both freaked out. She's real nervous now. Anytime we even touch her with our toe, she screams, get away from me. But anyway, I have a comment about, if we have any time left, I have a comment about the stillness and silence.
Mm-hmm.
I have this little mantra for me that I am practicing. It's real hard in a motorhome on the solitude and the space, but I call it silence, stillness, solitude, faith, and surrender. And I find for me to reach kind of a still point place, I don't have to do anything. If I set up all three, if I have the ability and the spaciousness in the moment to set up all three, all five, then I can get into what Audrey was saying about the bliss state. So I thought I'd share that with you.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, that Bill's space is just taking time. There's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, what is needed each day is a time where one goes from the darkness of perception into the light of silence, a quiet space where we can receive instruction from Source rather than being stuck in perception and, generational patterns. And
also the stillness the solitude is like when Jesus says, "Go into your closet to pray." And
Close the door.
Space for me, yeah, and I'm not practiced enough at this point to be able to be in the middle of an urban crowd, for example, and find that solitude. That I'm not there yet.
Right.
I'm very aware of it because I can't even find it in my motorhome. At between the busyness of our lives and the stillness.
It's
is
a practice.
Yeah, it is. And the stillness is like, for me, rest. Stop doing anything. Just be still. And then the space.
Number
is
one
like,
drug of the culture.
Yep. And
Number one drug of the
space,
culture is busyness.
Yeah, that's right. Tell me about it. It's the number one addiction. And
you can't be busy and be out of your mind.
Right. And the other addiction is being right and having to have our own way. Yeah, and that whole rabbit hole. But anyway, the space for me is like that, carving out the prayer space, carve out space. That's prayer. And then, of course, surrender has to do with our trust. So that kind of gets most of my issues right there.
Well, you're not alone.
Funny, I happen to have noticed that.
That's one of the games of the ego. Well, mine is worse than anybody else's. It's like, no, we're all just doing the same stuff. And the tools are the same for everybody.
Or the best. We think we are either the worst or the best. Oh, dear. I'm also would love your permission to send you a bunch of URLs, YouTube URLs, for an experience called Fire the Grid. And basically it's this New Brunswick woman's experience of her near-death experience. Actually, she was without breath for 15 minutes. And her 2-year-old son's brain-dead near-death experience, and how they both came out of it. And it's sort of like the Aramaic gospel in street language. This woman is phenomenal. She is so transparent. She talks about honesty. She talks about integrity. She talks about visualization and intention. She talks about the dark and the light. She doesn't say good and evil. She's never once said good and evil in relation to, judgment. She just says the dark and the light. And that, and what in this near-death experience, these beings came to her, and if she had thought they were angels or God or Jesus or anything like that, she would have hexed them right then and there and just died. But she's a Star Trekkie. And
a Trekkie, eh? Okay.
A Trekkie. And so what they looked like to her was extraterrestrials. And so she asked them at one point, why do I see you as extraterrestrials? And they said the light will only show up for a person in some form that they can relate to.
That is the brain cells for it.
Yeah.
Yep. So the eyes to see and the ears to hear.
I know it's almost the end of your show. So if with your permission, I'll send you those 13 YouTube. They're only about 45 minutes long each. There are 13 episodes. And in the very last episode, she says, this is not done. And I'll also send you the URL for her website. And
cool. Please do.
Interesting, fascinating. I think you'll love it. So 11
awesome.
episodes.
Well, when you send it, if you'd send me a text letting me know you sent it so it doesn't get lost in my email, I'll look forward to seeing it. All right.
Okay. And I don't know if you ever got down the rabbit hole, but if you didn't, I'll resend that too. Talk to you later.
Thank you. All right, blessings. All right, thanks everybody for joining us. Have a blessed one. Best year.